My name is Elizabeth Thompson. I'm 27 years old. I've been married for 5 years. I have one child, a son named Jack, who is 4 years old. I was working as a full-time employee right after getting married, but now I work as a part-timer at the same place. My husband is currently 30 years old. We, as a couple, started dating due to my husband, James's, persistent pursuit, which eventually led us to marriage. During our dating period, James was very kind, but it seems like he had the mentality of no need to feed the fish once it's caught, and he turned into a domineering man after marriage. He has a younger sister named Jennifer, who is about to turn 20, and he is overly indulgent with her, despite their age difference. Before our marriage, I had no issues with my sister-in-law. However, it wasn't just my husband who changed after we got married, she did too. She started visiting our home frequently, and James, who is indulgent with her, fulfills all her demands, making me feel like a housemaid who must operate according to Jennifer's requests. She often comes over without considering the time and without prior notice. Moreover, she always comes empty-handed. "Hey, bro, I'm here again." And she completely ignores me like it's a normal thing. Then, James as usual. "Good to see you. We were just about to have dinner, want some?" Offers her the meal that was meant for just the three of us. Then, as expected, she sits at the dinner table and responds, "Yeah. That's why I came." I quietly tell him that there's only enough food for 3, but he insists that since his sister came, I should serve my portion to her. And then, he says, "You should always prepare extra since we never know when she's going to show up. It's your fault for not making more." Upon hearing this, Jennifer apologizes to me with a sad face, which makes James comfort her and berate me, saying things like, "You have no tact," or "Stop bullying my sister." I don't think she apologizes to me from the bottom of her heart. She just feels joy by knowing that James, who defends her, takes good care of her more than me. I go to make something for myself and head towards the dining table where James, Jennifer, and my son are sitting, but upon seeing me, Jennifer says, "Bro, I need to talk to you about something private." And James, "You and Jack should eat somewhere else," excludes my son and I from the table. This is not the first time I've had to move Jack's meal to a tray and dine in the other room, just the two of us. After finishing the meal and heading to the kitchen to clean up the dishes, I noticed James and Jennifer chatting happily on the couch. And the dishes were left as is. Neither of them had ever bothered to bring the dishes down to the kitchen. Perhaps they see me as a housemaid. And they totally ignore the child as well. It's as if the housemaid has brought along a child. I sighed and started cleaning up the kitchen, preparing to bathe Jack, when James called me over. As I approached the couch where the two of them sat, James said, "Jennifer wants a piece of strawberry sponge cake from the bakery downtown. Could you go get it?" It was almost 8 p.m. Despite knowing that it's time to bathe the child, he tells me to go to the cake shop. "I can't. I need to bathe Jack and put him to bed." When I said this, Jennifer whined to James, "I really want to eat it. It's okay if he doesn't bathe just for today. How could you act like this when Jennifer has taken the trouble to visit us?" James began to yell. Knowing that this would continue until his demands were met, I reluctantly agreed to go. The bakery closes at 9 p.m., so if I left now, I'd just make it in time, and I rushed to prepare when I heard the two of them talking. In a voice loud enough for me to hear, they said things like, "Elizabeth is so inflexible, and why did you marry such a person?" Jack said, "I want to go too," so we decided to go together. The moment I stepped out the front door, I heard James' words, "If you defy me again, we're getting a divorce." He shouted this out loud. And Jack heard it too. He's only 4, so I don't think he understands the words, but he looks at me with a worried expression. I held back my tears at this treatment and asked him, "Jack, what kind of cake do you want to eat?" Jack's cloudy eyes sparkled. "Mommy, I want a cake with lots of apples." We had a lively conversation about cake on the way, and I was able to forget the unpleasant words for a moment. When we arrived at the cake shop, it was just about closing time. Although the selection was limited, I bought 2 slices of strawberry sponge cake and 1 slice of the fruit-covered cake that Jack had wanted, and headed home. I opened the box, placed the cakes on plates, and served them to James and Jennifer. Then, I also put a piece of cake on a plate for Jack and headed to the dining table. When Jennifer saw Jack's cake, "That cake looks more delicious," she said. To my surprise, James then took Jack's cake and replaced it with Jennifer's. When Jack protested, "That's my cake!" But Jennifer simply ignored him and ate his cake. Seeing Jack cry, James told him, "I bought that cake with the money I earned. So, Jack, you don't have the right to choose." He said this to a 4-year-old child. I was outraged at his comment and confronted the two of them. But again, he threatened, "I'm fine with getting a divorce." Jack stopped crying and looked at me with a worried expression. Then, after thinking for a while, Jack started eating the shortcake that Jennifer was supposed to eat. "Mommy, this cake is delicious. I'm glad I got this one," he said. I could tell he was forcing himself to be okay. There were 3 adults here forcing a small child to endure such a situation. Perhaps in response to Jack's words of it being delicious, the moment Jennifer's fork stretched towards Jack's cake, I picked up Jack's plate. "Jack, how about we eat in the other room?" Saying that, I took Jack to the other room and decided to let him eat his cake leisurely. I wanted to eat that shortcake too. Hearing her words, James, "It's fine if Jennifer has a bite, isn't it?" he shouted. I thought about talking back to James, but I didn't want Jack to hear the word divorce again, so I held back. In the other room, watching Jack eat his cake with a look of enjoyment, I felt a sense of relief. He had cake and I took a late bath together with Jack, ignoring my husband and Jennifer. We then went to bed together in Jack's bed. The next day, as usual, Jennifer had already left when I woke up. While I was waking up James and Jack and preparing breakfast, I heard Jack's crying, so I rushed to him. To my surprise, the porcelain piggy bank that my father bought for him, which I had placed in the living room, was broken, and the money inside was gone. Every night before sleep, Jack would always say goodnight to that piggy bank. I saw him saying goodnight to the piggy bank last night as well. With that, I thought that James, who was in the living room, would know something about it, so I immediately asked him. Then, without any remorse, "She just needed a little money, so she said she broke the piggy bank." He said it as if it didn't concern him at all, even while Jack was crying. I was consoling crying Jack, but before I knew it, I was crying along with him. I could bear not to cry over the things that James and Jennifer have done to me, but the fact that Jack was not protected by James, and wondering what Jack meant to James, made me sad. A feeling I had never experienced before, a mix of sadness and anger, welled up within me. Seeing Jack and I crying, James said, "Don't make me feel gloomy first thing in the morning." He coldly threw out his words. I finally lost my patience and openly showed my anger towards James. "Don't you think it's wrong what you did, even seeing Jack crying like this?" For the first time, I spoke out in anger. I had thought that I would never show a marital dispute in front of Jack, but I had reached my limit. Without responding to me, James quickly went to the bedroom, came back with something in his hand. It was a divorce form that he had brought. Shoving the divorce papers at me, If you're not satisfied with what I say and do, let's get a divorce." And just like that, he went off to work. Until now, Jack had never cried over anything involving James and Jennifer, but from last night, he had been crying non-stop as if he had reached his limit. I, too, had long passed the point of patience. "Jack, let's not push ourselves today and skip daycare, okay?" When I said that, Jack, with a loud yeah, seemed overjoyed at being able to stay with me. "Mommy's gonna be the daycare teacher today." Jack's face, happily perched on my knee and looking up at me, is angelic. I felt that such a small child's heart must be filled to the brim with patience. The two of us decided to play our hearts out today, to release all the pent-up patience inside us. At work, I knew it would cause some inconvenience, but I felt that this was the best way I could do for Jack. So I explained the situation and took some time off. We went to the park, played until we were out of energy by lunchtime, returned home to eat, and Jack seemed sleepy. Usually, he naps alone on the couch, but today he was incredibly clingy and laid down on my lap like a baby to sleep. I had planned to do housework during his nap, but I thought, today is a special day, and decided to find comfort in watching Jack's sleeping face. Then, suddenly, I heard the front door unlock. It was too early for my husband, James. With that thought, I hurriedly picked up a nearby bag and hid in the bedroom closet with him in my arms. I felt someone come in and, straining my ears, I heard a voice. The voice sounded familiar. And the intruder seemed to be rummaging through something. Damn it, where did he hide it? For a while, I was scared of the sound of her rummaging, but when I calmed down a bit, I recognized the owner of the voice. It was Jennifer. Why does she have a key? What is she here for? What is she looking for? I opened the closet slightly and decided to observe Jennifer's behavior and listen to her mumbling. After roughly opening and closing something with loud noises, she made a phone call with a big sigh. I can't find it anywhere. Yeah, I've looked there too, but it's not there. Okay, I understand. I'll go home for now, bro. She certainly said bro. As I was thinking about what Jennifer and James were looking for, I heard she locked the door. I came out of the closet, gently placed sleeping Jack on the bed, and pondered over what had just happened. Maybe they were looking for something of mine. But I had no idea what they were looking for. Suddenly, I felt like James is a stranger, and I was scared. In a hurry, I packed Jack's belongings into the bag I was holding. Just when I finished packing, he woke up. Jack, let's go to Grandpa's house. Saying this, I took sleepy Jack's hand, quickly headed for the station, and took the train to my parents' home. As my parents' home was only 2 stops away, we arrived quickly. Seeing us arrive without any notice, my parents were taken aback. As soon as Jack got home, he began playing happily with the family dog. While watching this, I explained to my parents about everything that had happened and what we had just experienced, telling them I was scared and that's why we came. I wonder if what Jennifer has been looking for is your banking card from your single days. I became certain that was it, too. Actually, I had a successful online shop for handmade goods which I started when I was single and later expanded by inviting my friends. In the handmade business, by the time the shop grew a bit famous, I had already decided to get married. I asked my trusted friends to take care of the shop until my child-rearing days were over, working part-time hours at the office and doing the rest of the work from home. Actually, I haven't told my husband that I'm still the president of the company. However, he does know about my past success with starting a business when I was single. I am still working at that company, but he thinks I have stepped down from my position as president and am working as a part-timer. There's a reason I've kept it a secret from my husband. After we decided to get married, I found out that he spends his entire salary and has no savings. He wanted me to quit my job and become a full-time housewife, promising to provide for our living expenses but only giving me $300 for food expenses. I couldn't accept these conditions, so after much arguing, it was settled that I would work part-time. But that's not all. He even had me sign a contract through a lawyer to renounce any claims to marital property after our marriage, and I felt like he made me not break up with him financially. Even after our child was born, I only received money for food expenses, and I have been paying for the child's clothes and daycare. Seeing me pay without complaint, he might think that I still have savings from my single days. That's probably why they're looking for my banking card from my single days. It all made sense. In addition to that, I have a savings account which I have been slowly adding to since our marriage for our child. I have actually been saving by having a portion of my salary transferred to that account. In any case, it's highly likely they're after the banking card. There's nothing else those siblings would be looking for. However, I believe in carrying my valuables like banking card, so no matter how much Jennifer or my husband search, they won't find anything. There's another problem, though. It's that Jennifer has a key and can come and go freely from our house. And the fact that my husband is okay with this situation. My father advised me to keep my banking card at our family home, so I took his advice and stored it in our family's safe. Then he voiced another concern. But why does he want to go to such lengths to get money? While pondering this with my parents, Jack came over and tearfully confessed to having broken the piggy bank he received from my father and his inability to save money in it as he had promised to do. This enraged my father, who turned red with anger. He was about to call my husband to voice his complaints when my mother stopped him. First, let's ascertain whether the banking card is really the objective. According to my mother, without any evidence, acting recklessly considering my husband's casual mentions of divorce, he could just flee with an excuse, declare us in the wrong, and this might give him an advantage in the divorce. So, I decided to record their conversation to find out what their true intentions were. For the time being, my parents decided to consult a family lawyer who's been a friend of my father since way back, and we decided to return to our home. As I was preparing dinner after coming home, my husband returned. I started recording on my phone and placed it face down. As expected, his first question was about the location of the banking card. When I asked why he wanted to know the location of the banking card, the conversation did not progress as he simply evaded the question. I kept silent, which made my husband angry. "My sister is in trouble, so hand over all your part-time job earnings." In response, I said, "I can't because I'm saving for our child." Upon hearing this, he took out a signed divorce paper from his bag and thrust it at me. "You can't even live without me, and yet you're so arrogant. It's okay not to save money for our child now." He insinuated that there was no way I could divorce him and implied that his sister was more important than Jack. Without a word, I stopped preparing dinner, put the divorce papers in the bag I had prepared when I visited my parents during the day, grabbed Jack's hand, and headed for the front door. "If you leave, don't ever come back. I'm serious about the divorce." In response, he said, "I don't want to return to a house where Jennifer can freely come and go." I then left the home I was accustomed to. Almost immediately, I received an inordinate number of calls and emails from my husband, all of which I ignored and headed to my parents' house. I let my parents listen to the recording I had made earlier and showed them the filled-out divorce papers I had been handed by my husband. They asked me what I wanted to do. I said that I had run out of patience and love, but my main concern was Jack's feelings. They said that it might be best to divorce to prevent further harm to Jack's heart, but that's an adult's opinion, and there's also the possibility that the divorce could cause new harm to the child's heart. As I was lost in thought, Jack mentioned he was hungry, and so my mother made his favorite dish, hamburgers. Upon hearing that she had bought ingredients in advance so we could return home at any time, tears welled up in my eyes and I could not hold them back. The hamburger must have been delicious because Jack, "I wish I could eat Grandma's hamburgers every day," grinning from ear to ear, and told that to my mother. "Well, that's because it's a hamburger filled with how much I love you." After that, Jack popped a bite-sized piece of hamburger into my mouth. "This hamburger is filled with love, isn't it tasty? So, Mommy, please don't cry." This was something I couldn't bear. And I cried even more. Seeing Jack in distress, my father quickly said, "These are tears of joy. Your mother is crying because she's so happy you gave her a hamburger." And he took his time to gently explain it to Jack. If Jennifer was here, she would have eaten this hamburger. As he said this, my mother started crying and hugged him. Looking at my father, I noticed he was also trying hard not to cry, his eyes welling up. When I said, "Family is wonderful, isn't it?" to Jack, he looked at me with surprise and asked, "Dad said his only family is Jennifer. Is my family just Grandma and the others?" My father replied, "That's right." Then he continued, "Do you want to live together as a family forever?" "Yeah, we're a family, right?" He tilted his head to the side, grinned, and made us all laugh. When was the last time we relaxed and enjoyed a meal like this? When was the last time we had a meal filled with so many smiles? I decided to divorce, and slowly conveyed this decision to Jack. He seemed to not feel any love from his father and was happy to stay with the family, so he understood about the divorce. Also, even though our dog back at our parents' house was older, Jack happily hugged him, saying, "He's my little brother." The next step is just to act. I will contact the lawyer of my father's friend and meet him tomorrow to talk. That night, Jack slept with my father and our dog, Max. I shared a bed with my mother, reminiscing about stories from my childhood until we fell asleep. The next day, when I turned on my phone, I found over 200 missed calls and emails from my husband, James. The emails alternated between scathing remarks and pleas for forgiveness, leaving me uncertain whether he was genuinely remorseful. Sighing, I turned off my phone again. In the afternoon, my lawyer arrived and I discussed the details of my situation, confirming my decision to divorce at the same time. Subsequently, we officially signed the contract, and the lawyer said he would meet with James the next day. 2 days later, the lawyer came to my parents' house. When I asked about the outcome, it turned out that Jennifer had a shopping addiction and frequented male strip clubs, borrowing a significant amount of money from loan sharks who easily lend to her, with James as her guarantor. It seems that they had a plan between them to use my savings to repay the debt when the repayment was delayed. He seemed to be saying that since he confessed, he didn't want a divorce and wanted me and Jack to come back. When I told him that I was determined to divorce and had already submitted the divorce papers. "Does that mean Elizabeth can marry someone else?" he asked the lawyer. "If she has the opportunity, yes." When he replied, "But I don't want to let her go." It seems he broke down crying. Then, he signed a promissory note to pay Jack $500 in child support every month, and the lawyer said that he had brought everything to a close. Afterwards, I received a call from my ex-husband and we talked briefly. His voice had lost its vigor and he spoke calmly. He had thought that by financially binding me, I wouldn't be able to divorce him, even if I ended up despising him. And he admitted that he had always believed that it was brotherly love to do everything for Jennifer, his younger sister who had always been dependent on him since they were kids, but he now realized that it was a mistake. He confessed that he was jealous of Jack, feeling as if I had been taken from him even though he did love Jack. Once Jennifer and I have finished repaying her debts, I'll come for you, so please don't remarry. When I told him that my love for him had withered and there was absolutely no chance of us starting over, I could hear his sobbing over the phone. Then I said, "Please be happy." And he hung up the phone. I decided to rely on my parents until Jack grows up, and transferred him to a different daycare. I also revived my career as a businesswoman at the same time. As for my ex-husband and Jennifer, I couldn't stay silent any longer, so I told my in-laws about everything. They were outraged that they could never see Jack again, and they decided to disown the two of them. James and Jennifer are living together in an old apartment, and it seems that the stress of their cramped quarters has led them to constantly blame each other for their current predicament. Despite once being so close as siblings, they have only themselves to blame. I've decided to consider their situation as my own form of revenge. When I received the handset handed to me, a man on the other end claimed to be a police officer. Just a moment ago, a man claiming to be your husband was transported by ambulance after falling from his wheelchair. We would like to speak with you about it. Can you come to the hospital urgently? I was so shocked by the sudden news that I became flustered. My husband? Understood. I'm at work right now, so I'll check with my boss and head over immediately. I inquired about the hospital to which he was transported, and despite being in the middle of a meeting, I explained the situation, obtained permission from my boss, and left the office. Catching a taxi immediately, I headed to the hospital where two police officers and my husband, Ben, were waiting in the room I was guided to. As soon as I entered the room, Ben pointed at me and shouted, "It's her! She's the one who knocked over the wheelchair! Wait a minute! What are you talking about?" I was completely taken aback by the abrupt accusation, confused about what was happening. Me, knocking over Ben's wheelchair? After all, I went straight to work from a business trip today, so it had been roughly 2 days since I last saw him. As I stood there in shock, unable to speak, Ben raised his voice. "Because of what you did, I want a divorce. And prepare compensation. $30,000. Wait a minute. Why would?" My voice trembled as I was completely overwhelmed. "Can we discuss the details at the police station?" The officer stated firmly, urging me to accompany them. Despite explaining multiple times at the police station that I had been at work, the misunderstanding continued, increasing my anxiety. Then, an unexpected person showed up. It was Emma, the chief of Ben's shop. "My name is Anne, 43 years old. I work for a company related to health food. Mainly dealing with beauty supplements, I'm busy running around the sales office with my team for new product proposals. My husband, Ben, who is 2 years my senior, runs a beauty salon on his own, thankfully never short of customers. We met when we were both students, working part-time at the same pub. One time, he protected me from a drunk customer, which started our conversation. From there, we hit it off over shared interests in beauty, and while I was swayed by Ben's assertive nature, I was also drawn to his reliability in times of need and married him a few years later. By then, we were both working professionals. Ben had finished vocational school and was apprenticing at a salon, and I had settled into my job at the current company. I chose to continue working even after marriage. Partly because Ben's income as a hairstylist alone was not enough for both of us to live on, but also because I wanted to build my career. We decided not to have children, opting instead to dedicate our time to work and hobbies. A decision that often surprises our friends, though neither Ben nor I mind. We believe in each having our own form of family. My work schedule varies, with some days ending at regular hours and others requiring overtime. As for holidays, I usually have weekends and public holidays off. Ben generally returns home around the same time each day, but has irregular holidays due to shift work. Hence, our homecoming times and days off vary. But we're both content living our lives, enjoying our hobbies. I'm into bodybuilding, often spending my free time at the gym. Protein supplements are a staple at home, and drinking them after gym sessions has become a routine, also serving as a chance to test our products. Ben's hobby is working on and touring with his motorcycle. There's a small garage behind our house where his prized large motorcycle is kept. He's been passionate about bikes since before we met, collecting tools, parts, and even antique components. Once, he said, "I'm worried about the bike because a typhoon is hitting us directly," and spent the night in the garage in a sleeping bag, worried about his newly changed tires getting damaged. "Hey, it's dangerous. Why don't you come inside?" "I'm more worried about the bike than myself. I can't sleep thinking about it getting damaged." His serious tone left me utterly dumbfounded, and I couldn't say anything more. However, about 2 months ago, Ben had an accident while riding with his touring group and broke his leg. I was off that day and shocked when I received the call from the hospital. Seeing him in a wheelchair with a broken right leg, I asked, "Are you okay? Are you planning to close the shop?" "If we close, Emma would be in trouble. Of course, we'll keep the shop open." Emma has been working at Ben's beauty salon since its opening. She is entrusted with the role of chief and is popular with customers due to her brisk and friendly nature. "Really? But how will you get to work? The house and the shop are a bit far apart. You always said it takes you about 20 minutes to walk, right? I have work too, so it's difficult for me to drive you. The shop opens at 10 a.m., but I leave the house by 8 a.m. It's extremely dangerous for him to go that distance in a wheelchair by himself, considering it takes 20 minutes on foot without a fracture." "Yeah, that's true. I can't drive a car either, so I'll discuss it with Emma." Later, Ben and Emma talked it over, and it was decided that Emma would drive him. I complained about her having to leave her house earlier because of this, but Ben said it was Emma who offered to do the driving. "She said she's the owner's right arm and got all excited about it." Though he seemed a bit troubled saying it, Ben didn't seem entirely displeased either. "I'm too busy to meddle in the shop's affairs, but I can't help feeling astonished at my husband's situation. For the past 2 months, we've relied on her for Ben's transportation, feeling both guilty and grateful. Once, when I visited the shop because I needed to talk to Ben, I had a conversation with Emma, who seems to be actively taking hair supplements. I occasionally bring our company's hair supplements as a token of appreciation, always thanking her. Emma, are you sure it's not too much of a burden? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I'm tough, so this is nothing for me." "I'm sorry, it just feels like..." "Don't worry about it. By the way, the supplement you brought last time was amazing. I even shared some with my friends and recommended it." Her always cheerful demeanor somehow felt reassuring. I'm proud that such a bright and wonderful girl is the face of this beauty salon. "Actually, I have a business trip coming up, but could you cut my hair before I leave? Just a trim is fine." "Where are you going?" "I'm expecting souvenirs, you know." She joked as she pulled out the appointment book from behind the counter and flipped to the reservation page. "It's nothing special." I laughed along as I chose an available date and time. "Then I'll see you in a week." "Yes, please." The week flew by, and on the day I was to cut Emma's hair, I stopped by the shop during a break from work, just as the previous customer, a woman in her 50s with a soft bob and light perm, was leaving. The woman walked out briskly, looking youthful. Emma, who was behind the counter, watched her leave, then looked down to write something in the appointment book. As I entered, she looked up and momentarily appeared awkward, but quickly returned to her usual smile. "Hello. Could you wait just a moment? I'll be ready in no time." She said this and quickly cleaned up the hair on the floor and sanitized the chair, finishing everything in about 3 minutes. "Sorry to keep you waiting. Please, have a seat here." I sat down in the indicated chair and looked at myself in the mirror. I hadn't had a haircut in a while and looked quite aged. "How careless can I get?" To my spontaneous remark, Emma laughed. "Not at all. You just want a trim today, right?" "That's right. I'm thinking of growing it out to try this style next." I tapped my phone, showing her a hair catalog webpage, and pointed to a photo of a shoulder-length hairstyle. "Do you think it would suit me?" "It'll look great. You have a bit of a wave in the back here, so we'll make sure to cover that." "It'll suit you perfectly." Emma gestured. "You'll look fantastic. Let's do it," and exclaimed over the mirror. Even though the shop played calming music box tunes and maintained a peaceful atmosphere, something felt off, like a mix of unease beneath Emma's steady hands and expressions. Maybe it was intuition. Despite the ordinary setting with music box tunes, Emma's expressions, the sound of scissors, and our chat, something seemed different. Since it was just a trim, the haircut was finished quicker than usual, and I paid before leaving. I decided to head home immediately due to my next appointment, but as she saw me off, I couldn't help but notice she seemed a bit down. I impulsively asked her, "Emma, are you tired? Are you getting enough rest?" "Not at all. Do I have dark circles? I've been watching dramas late into the night recently." She laughed off, making me second-guess my concern. "If you're feeling good, then that's great. Thanks for today. Good luck on your business trip." I waved back at her encouragement and left the shop. That night, as I looked up at the beautiful full moon on my way home, I found Ben had unusually come home before me. I was a bit surprised as I put down my things and started preparing dinner. "Hey, I got a haircut from Emma today. What do you think?" Ben looked up from his motorcycle magazine and said, "It doesn't seem much different. Can't you say something nice like it suits me? I just got it trimmed today. Thought I should groom myself once in a while," I retorted, to which Ben scoffed. "We're both in our 40s, what's there to suit or not?" His comment, whether a joke or his real thoughts, was followed by him returning to his magazine. Lately, or maybe for a few years now, I've felt Ben being somewhat cold towards me. I remember how he used to praise me for even a small haircut, saying I looked beautiful, and wonder if we were just younger back then. Speaking of today, I was a bit worried about Emma. She seemed a bit down. She said she was fine, but I wonder if something is burdening her. Suddenly, Ben became visibly annoyed and said, "Are you saying you don't like her driving me around?" "That's not what I said. I'm just worried about Emma." "Then don't worry. I know her well enough. Don't meddle in the shop's affairs." "Sorry, no need to get so mad." After dinner, Ben and I ate, and I decided to go to bed early to prepare for tomorrow's business trip. The next day, I left home early in the morning and took the train. I had a meeting with a client and then another meeting at the head office, planning to spend a busy day before staying overnight at a hotel and returning early the next morning by train. Sitting on the train, I opened my planner to check my schedule for the day, realizing I had meetings from morning till evening. This is going to be a headache, I murmured while eating a sandwich I had bought earlier. Though business trips aren't frequent, I thought it was nice to have a taste of travel now and then. Arriving at my destination, The cool autumn breeze felt refreshing as I stood on the platform. It was a nice start to the day. My office has 3 meeting rooms, and the largest one was where the meeting began. It was still morning when I started feeling a bit sleepy. The door opened, and a clerk looked around, spotted me, and came over with a phone handset. "For me?" As I took the handset, a man on the other end identified himself as a police officer. "Just a moment ago, a man claiming to be your husband was transported by ambulance after falling from his wheelchair. Can you come to the hospital urgently?" I was so shocked by the sudden news that I became flustered. "My husband? Understood. I'm at work right now, so I'll check with my boss and head over immediately." I found out which hospital he was taken to, explained the situation to my boss during the meeting, and left the office. Catching a taxi immediately, I headed to the hospital where 2 police officers and Ben were waiting in the room I was guided to. As soon as I entered the room, Ben pointed at me and shouted, "It's her! She's the one who knocked over the wheelchair! Wait a minute! What are you talking about?" I was completely taken aback by the abrupt accusation, confused about what was happening. Me, knocking over Ben's wheelchair? Besides, I went straight to work from a business trip today, so it had been roughly 2 days since I last saw him. As I stood there in shock, unable to speak, a young-looking officer confirmed with Ben. "Is it really her?" "Yes, that's her. I saw it with my own eyes. Anne, I never dreamed you would do such a thing. You've been timing this, haven't you?" "What are you talking about? There's no way I would do that." "Because you did this, I'm getting a divorce. And prepare the compensation. $30,000. Wait a minute. Why would? My voice trembled as I was completely overwhelmed. One of the 2 police officers, a bigger-built man, turned to me and asked where I was about an hour ago when Ben fell, and if I was with anyone. I answered with a shaky voice. "I was in a meeting at work at that time," honestly telling them. "Please believe me." Indeed, they had called my workplace. Since I was attending a meeting, both my boss and colleagues could vouch for me. It should be clear to them that I wasn't the perpetrator once they verify with them. The younger-looking officer began. "Is that so? But we'll need to hear the details at the police station," he said with a scoff, implying disbelief, and I was taken into custody. "If you check with my workplace, it'll all be clear." "Of course, we'll do that, but this is a hospital, not a place for interrogation. And currently, we also have to consider the possibility of attempted murder on your husband," the officer stated clearly, urging me to accompany them. Reluctantly, I followed them and informed my workplace that I wouldn't be able to return today, heading to the police station. As I was leaving the room, I saw Ben smiling broadly, looking satisfied as if everything was settled. And I didn't miss the sound of him making a call as I stepped into the hallway. At the police station, I kept repeating the same thing. "So, I was at work at that time. You know my workplace's number, right?" I mustered up the courage to reiterate that I had an alibi, asking them to verify with my company. However, they were reluctant to release me, and my anxiety grew. What would be my motive? Why would I push Ben's wheelchair? Could be for the insurance money, or to have all the property to yourself. I would never do something this stupid just for that. No matter what I said, the police officer wouldn't believe me, and the clock's hands just kept moving forward meaninglessly. After a while, suddenly, Emma came to visit me at the police station. A woman in her 50s who looked a lot like her was with her. Apparently, this was Emma's mother. "I'm really sorry for coming out of the blue. And I'm really sorry." Unlike the usual Emma, she began to apologize abruptly with a face that looked like she was about to cry. I was so surprised that I couldn't even speak. "I just got a call from the owner, hearing that you were taken by the police. I consulted with Mom. We came here to clear name and claim your innocence." "What do you mean?" Then Emma started explaining everything, which roughly went like this. Emma had started dating Ben a few years ago and gradually fell for him. Ben, too, became serious about his relationship with Emma, saying, "I'll divorce and eventually, so please wait for me." However, even after 2 or 3 years, there was no progress, and Ben showed no signs of divorcing, so Emma told him they should break up and she would quit the shop, to which he replied yesterday, "I've thought of a good method," he said. "A good method?" "Yes. That's about today's incident." The plan was to first make his wheelchair fall in a ditch on a deserted roadside, claim to the police and the ambulance that someone had made him fall. And when I arrived, and is the criminal, he would tell the police, and in my confusion, demand a divorce and compensation. Of course, I was against it because it was impossible, but the owner said you were weak to pressure, so it would be fine. Moreover, after the divorce, we could get married and use the compensation money for a trip. I felt dizzy. In other words, Ben was staging a self-directed drama involving the police and hospital to divorce me. This even surprised the young police officer who was listening by my side. "It's originally my fault for having an affair with the owner. It's also my fault for not stopping the owner even though I knew about this plan. I've wrongfully accused you, and I'm truly sorry." I was shocked to have been cheated on, and indeed, I was dumbfounded. Somehow regaining my composure and facing Emma, I clearly and slowly told her, "Emma, I appreciate you telling me about Ben's plan. But what you did can't be easily forgiven. Do you understand that?" "Yes, I understand." Emma looked me in the eye and answered firmly. Indeed, she seemed like a tough girl. Afterward, the 2 police officers who had brought me in changed their expressions upon hearing Emma's testimony and went out to question Ben. And a few hours later, he was arrested for making false statements to the police and causing disorder in their operations. "Why has it come to this?" He was complaining when he came to the police station, but I thought it was his responsibility and didn't feel like defending him even when we were both being questioned. That day, I was the only one released, and I went home with Emma. Eventually, Ben avoided jail time by paying a fine, but in a small town, rumors spread quickly, and several regulars canceled their reservations. Customers decreased, and eventually, the shop had to close. Having lost his credibility, he couldn't find a job as a hairdresser in his hometown. As for me, I decided that I couldn't continue with someone who tried to frame me and immediately presented him with divorce papers to leave. Until the end, Ben refused to sign the divorce papers, saying, "You're all I have. Can't you reconsider the divorce?" He said that, but I coldly pointed out his affair with Emma. "You've been telling Emma for years that you'd divorce me, right? You really wanted to divorce, didn't you? Now is the time, isn't it?" Then Ben turned pale and said, "It's not like that. It's a misunderstanding." Thinking about it, maybe his relationship with Emma was just a game to him, but I couldn't help feeling a bit of sympathy for her. Afterward, Emma submitted her resignation to Ben, told him they were done, and moved to a different place right away. Between us, she stopped by my place just before moving to give me her new address. "And I'm really sorry for the trouble I've caused. This is my new address. Please send the claim for the compensation here." She had prepared herself to do all this. Knowing how briskly and cheerfully she used to serve customers in the shop only made my heart ache more. I took the envelope Emma handed me. Understood. I nodded. I wonder what she felt all these years being with me. I wanted to ask her something mean, but the thought was too frightening, and I never could bring myself to ask. Emma, take care, okay? That was all I could manage to say. Emma nodded with tearful eyes and left. I haven't seen her since then. As for Ben, by that time, we were separated, and he was living a part-time life alone. He persistently sent me messages updating me on his life, trying to evoke sympathy, but I continued to ignore those messages with a firm stance. Eventually, through a lawyer, the divorce with Ben was finalized, and I nearly ended up paying compensation, but instead, I was the one to receive it. It was exactly $30,000. Ben's debt ballooned as he struggled to pay this, ending up in financial trouble. He already had debts from closing the beauty salon and its procedures. Now, he started doing multiple part-time jobs to pay them off. Regarding Emma, the lawyer asked, "You could claim compensation from her as well. What would you like to do?" I was hesitant for a long time. Being betrayed was certainly a shock, and knowing that Ben grew cold towards me because of her made me angry. However, for some reason, I couldn't bring myself to hate her. Maybe she, too, wanted the affair to be exposed somewhere deep down, having energetically worked as the shop's chief and supported Ben, and even during the moments at the police station and our farewell. Maybe she wanted to end the relationship but couldn't. This is just my speculation, and I know it sounds naive. But still, I felt it would be cruel to claim compensation from her, so I told the lawyer, "I won't claim anything from Emma. I'm grateful for her support of my husband's shop and for helping me at the police station." The lawyer, in a businesslike manner, merely replied, "Is that so?" and looked at another document. I received the compensation from my ex-husband and have since thrown myself into work and my hobby, bodybuilding, with renewed vigor. My bosses and colleagues were surprised by the divorce, but I wasn't pitted strangely and have been able to return to my calm daily life as before. It's been several weeks since the divorce chaos and compensation claim procedures. On a cool holiday morning and evening, while organizing my chest, the envelope with the new address given by Emma appeared. I had completely forgotten about it since finishing the conversation with the lawyer. "I don't need this anymore." I put strength into the middle of the envelope, tearing it in half, then tore it into smaller pieces and threw it away. I haven't been in touch with her since, but I wonder if she's still working as a hairstylist somewhere. Glancing at the mirror, I noticed my hair had grown longer since the last time she cut it. Thinking it was about time to get a haircut again, I tapped the screen of my mobile phone to search for a beauty salon.